Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our 2023 quarter two NG911 GIS user group meeting. Glad to see y'all hopping in here and joining us. As usual, I'll try to monitor the chat and things, so feel free to submit a chat in the window if you have something, or even we'll pause for questions after each of us presents. So if you have a question at that time, unmute yourself and feel free to ask your question then. So we're going to follow our typical agenda. Well, we'll start with, I'll start things off with a project update, and then Will Trimble will give us an update on the NG911 toolbox. And then following that, Sherry Massey will provide updates on GeoMSAG training and always miscellaneous topics that have come up that we find important to update you all on. All right, so to get things started, I haven't shown this the last couple meetings, so I thought it was kind of neat to show you guys. We report these numbers at every Kansas 911 Coordinating Council meeting. So I thought kind of interesting for you to know that, first of all, that in the GIS committee report, we update the submission totals as to let them know how much data we're receiving and that, you know, we're getting full participation still. So this is the last 4 quarters. Just so that you know kind of where we're trending, that typically in a quarter we're getting, you know, in 95 or in the high 90s of data submitted that has changes, which is fantastic because we want those changes submitted. And often we're getting more than one submission from a PSAP within a quarter, but this is, we just count that at least you submitted once with a change. We also have, I wanted to highlight the second one, which is, you know, occasionally we have a PSAP that has maybe hasn't passed QA because they've got some error checking to go back and review, or maybe they've had a staff turnover or retirement or something. And that's why we have this called, maybe they have a submission plan, didn't pass QA, they kind of be in that same category. And that's perfectly acceptable. So we appreciate all of you. If you ever have something like that, you have a staff leave, someone retire, some issue with the quarter, thank you for communicating with us and just letting us know, hey, you know what, we're not going to have something in by the deadline, but we're working on it. You know, we're hiring someone or we're training someone or whatever. So that is acceptable if you have some sort of, you know, circumstance out of your control where you have to delay your submission. So please just continue to communicate with myself, Sherry Massey, and Will Trimble, if that were to occur in your organization. We regularly have, you know, 10 to 12 or so PSAPs that submit no changes, which is of course acceptable. We have a lot of rural area in Kansas, so no changes acceptable. We appreciate just, you know, it's part of the requirement that at least you let us know you're still engaged, you're still working on that data, you just didn't have any changes this quarter. That's totally fine. And the best one, and this is a little skewed because we're in the middle of a quarter, but you know, these all need to be zeros. So we appreciate your engagement, your submissions, and yeah, we need full participation every quarter as mandated. I included this quarter's totals just so you kind of get an idea where we're at, you know, where we at the beginning of May. We're only a month into it. So a lot of submissions still to come this quarter. Just a reminder, the deadline is June 30th. That's the end of this quarter. And then these totals, it's the way it's counted is there's 107 jurisdictions total or PSAPs that submit data, because some jurisdictions submit on behalf of multiple PSAPs. So we kind of have to, you know, mess with the math a little bit to get to that total, but that's how we know that we have full participation with that 107. So I just thought that was kind of interesting for you to see kind of the tracking of the type of submissions we get, how amazing we are. We always brag every time we present to, you know, to any other states or to national conferences that it's amazing the participation we have. And I love, especially when we get comments from the telecommunicators saying, hey, there's a, you know, new store being built and I don't see it in the data. So I love that those eyes are on the data as well, communicating back to GIS. So really good effort there. So the next slide, I hope this is about the last time I show you this map because we are getting so close. So just as a reminder, every county or PSAP that is in green is already moved over and part of the Kansas hosted solution. So all operating from using Radius map as their mapping solution, all on the Kansas NG911, I3 network on that same platform. We had a few counties that were still using their own 911 solution, but they are starting to convert over. So some of that is Lynn County joined the MARC region. So every county or PSAP in the gray is now part of the Kansas City MARC region, which of course extends out into Missouri. So they've joined that region. And then Marshall and Brown are two final PSAPs to join the hosted solution. They have signed agreements and they're working out the details on getting circuits installed and converting their data to GeoMSAG and all that good stuff. So probably in the next few months, this will turn to the entire state will be green, except for the MARC region, which, has their own NG911 call routing solution. So that is really exciting. I think at the beginning of this project, I think the first year that we started cutting over to the hosted solution, we were up to maybe 11 by the end of the year. So this just shows tremendous effort on everyone's part. The coordinating council, the 911 administrator, technical leads, GIS, all of you submitting your data. Just to know that whether you place a 911 call in Buncey County or Grant County, the telecommunicators are looking at the same map with the same data quality, with the same solution, and getting you, emergency services. And I hope you never have to call 911. But point is, it's consistent across the state, and I think that's pretty amazing. So again, hopefully this is the last time you've seen the map, because everything will be green or MARC region. So I think that's really exciting. Okay, other updates. Speaking of rapid deploy radius, again, that's the call handling mapping solution that's used by the telecommunicators, their map view. They are getting ready to release a version 5 of that software. There's no release date announced yet. It's just currently still being tested, reviewed, working on training, all those, pre-release items. But there were a couple things coming out of that version 5 release that I wanted to mention. One is the PSAPs, so the telecommunicators will have the opportunity to create map markups within this call handling map. So it'll all be within their PSAP and a map. So the neat thing about that is we've been asked throughout the years, hey, what if I just needed some way to put control burns on the map, or there's a roadblock, or some real temporary way to show something on the map so the call handlers can all see that. That's what this map markups will do. It's real simple. Again, we've only seen a demo of it, but it looks like it's an interaction where they'll be able to choose like a symbol, a color, be able to draw a box or put a point in the map and then put it into a category, like a predefined category of that, and then set a timeline of this event is happening and it expires, whatever, at the end of the day, whatever that might be. So we're really excited about that. Again, we've only seen a demo, so more to come on that once we've been able to get our hands on it and really play with it. Another kind of exciting thing coming from version 5 is there'll be a map measurement tool, which I think has been asked for a lot by the telecommunicators. So they'll be able to actually click on it and, just like, in your GIS software, be able to measure a distance from something. So, so some exciting new items to the map markup, to the maps. I think the interface overall, except for sign-ins and a few things, the map part of it isn't changing a lot, but just adding some new tools and capabilities there. Also coming soon, we've been communicating with our surrounding states, and Nebraska and Oklahoma have data that's been validated and actually officially considered NG911 ready. So that also will be, Trimble's gonna actually work on adding that to the radius map view. So right now, we of course have all of your authoritative data for the state of Kansas, but all of the surrounding state counties we've been using just Tiger US Census data. So we're really excited to start bringing in authoritative data from Nebraska and Oklahoma, because they're kind of at the point where they're ready to share. So that'll include whatever they'll provide for us. And most of their data is public domain from the other states. So we'll be bringing in address points, roads, maybe emergency service boundaries, kind of whatever's available, and we can easily integrate to the map. So that'll make it a lot easier for all of our counties on the border to be able to peek over into Nebraska, Oklahoma, or wherever in case a call has to be transferred or is, outside of their region, but they need to see what's going on across jurisdictions. So that will be coming soon for the telecommunicators as well. So the other item I'd like to bring up is the NG911 portal. You probably all have noticed that we reorganized the GIS menus a little bit. The portal continues to grow and grow and grow and serve so many purposes beyond data submission. So we needed to kind of consolidate what was going on with GIS. No one has emailed or commented on that. So I guess you guys are all super smart and fantastic. So you must have all figured it out. And the only big change is instead of on the menu bar, instead of upload GIS data being right on the menu bar, you just now have to click on GIS data and then upload GIS data is underneath that. And that's also where you'll see submit a GIS data request. So really all the GIS functions we're trying to keep under that GIS data menu. So we have more room for future growth. So if you have any questions on the portal ever, feel free to reach out to me and I'd be happy to help you with that. Let's see, in other updates, I want to talk a little bit about data. So boy, the current buzzwords in the NG911 world are building footprints, 3D, Z-axis, you name it. That's kind of the current hot topic in the world of NG911. So we have been working on how to compile building footprints, what we need them to look like, what's the criteria for them. And this is also almost working to see what like the FCC requirements are, understanding what our mapping software, what data it can handle, what information it can return. So there's a lot of unknowns at this point, but we are currently, the GIS committee and specifically really Will, Sherry and I and Ken are evaluating national data sets. There's some national building footprint data sets available. We found them to be not entirely accurate. So, there might be some uses for it, as well as Microsoft Bing Maps has a building footprints option. And we also, if you remember, had Certix create building footprints for some, I think it was about 5 Kansas pilot counties. So we're kind of evaluating all the data that's out there, trying to understand the requirements, understanding how the data will be integrated into the 911 mapping software, what kind of information will be able to return to the call handler. So just so you know, we're watching that, we're reviewing, we're engaged with that whole topic, and there's a lot more to come from that. So as we know more, as some decisions are made or things start rolling out, we'll provide more information to you all about building footprints and what your telecommunicators will actually be able to see on their map in regard to that. For other data, also want to talk about what's going public. So pretty soon on the Dask Hub, you will see the NG911 address points for all of you that actually approved for address points to go public. That was a request I sent out, probably a year ago now, about whether or not you'd be willing to share that publicly with the national address database. So we've shared that content with them, and then I will soon be, Will and I are actually, Dave Groeling in our office will be putting that data out for public availability on the Dask Hub site. Again, for all of those that have approved that can go public. And the same thing goes for roads. That data request is still open. I'm still waiting for a few PSAPs to reply on whether they're going to approve or deny that. Just so y'all know, we continuously get a request to access to this data. And we also continuously get people saying, well, gosh, I don't understand why, my navigation device on my phone told somebody they could go this way, and then that's not true. So really the only way, the most effective way for us to get this data out to commercial providers like Google or Here Maps or things like that, the easiest way is just to make it public so they can come grab it whenever they want. The second way is for us to continue to submit requests to ask for your approval to share with them. I just feel like there's so many purposes of this data to help with accuracy, and whether it's navigation or delivery or things like that, we just continue to ongoing get requests for this data. So long story short, we'll be putting out the approved address points and roads for public consumption here probably within the next couple of months. And for those of you that don't approve, we'll continue to send your request, or we'll continue to check in with you to see if you change your mind and you're willing to go public. For the counties that have said, you know, just make my data public, go forward. I know a lot of them said, you know, it saves us a lot of time internally with processing those data requests. So just, you know, we'll be doing that soon. And also in regards to the data request, we've gotten this question and it's a good one. And I always have to check with Will to make sure, because he processes the data request. But any approved data that we distribute on your behalf, whether it's address points, roads, anything in the 911 data model, it is distributed only with the Kansas 911 GIS data model attributes. We do not include any local attributes that you might include in your submission. Those are stripped out and it's just the data model attributes. So so I just want to make sure there weren't any concerns with, oh, I don't want them to include any of my other data submitted. It's just the attributes defined in the data model. So I'm almost done. I'm on the data soapbox today, aren't I? I don't know what to say about data. A couple other things, city boundaries. I know it's optional in NG911 data, but it's super important for so many different uses, and it's shown on the 911 map. So continue to submit those through NG911, or even if you submit them through the Orca portal, that's fine too. But city boundaries we need for many purposes, and as well for reference on the 911 map. And also a reminder, parcels, same thing, whether you submit them through the 911 portal or through the Orca portal, that's great. I would say that that is probably one of the most requested, talked about, referred to data sets in 911 call handling is the telecommunicators. They see the parcel boundaries on the map. It displays owner names, and that information is so vital for them to help with emergency situations. So please continue to keep those updated. And as always, if you have any questions about the data submission, the validation tools, feel free to reach out to myself, Will, Sherry, really anyone on the GIS committee. We'd be happy to help you with those questions. Okay, I think I'm done with my data discussion. Any questions for me before I hand it off to Will? Okay, I'll hand off to Will. Thanks.
Thanks, Eileen. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, so we've got a new toolbox release slated for this quarter. I'm going to try and get this out the start of next week. And in that toolbox, we've got a couple it's mostly housekeeping, small stuff. It's not going to have a lot of impact on anything as far as your submission process, but we've got an issue with some blank values that we're getting in through some of the checks and the authoritative left-right fields and road center lines that we want to remove. The way this was working out for the couple that are in there is just essentially it's getting classified as a no. And we just want to make sure that everybody is actually making that decision for themselves, yes or no on that, and it's not defaulting to a no value just because the field was not filled out. And then PSP doesn't like a blank value there as well. So it just smooths out that process so that we make sure we have an actual answer in the field for whether that's authoritative data or not. The second option is going to be a change to some of the error messaging that we just put in for the new address points GOM-SAG overlap test with the road center lines. The way it's in the check value, check field value check results table is that it's pretty much the same message if it's an overlap between a road center line and a road center line and a road center line versus an address point. We got some feedback from some people that made sense that it was a little bit confusing, especially if you're trying to join the tables to your data and do some corrections that you're not 100% sure whether you're looking to find an overlap with another road center line or with one of those address point GOM-SAGs. So we're just going to modify that messaging slightly to make that more clear that these values that are overlapping are either overlapping another road center line or another one of those address points that are flagged as a GOM-SAG. And the last fix that I'm going to put in there is also, it's not used a lot, I don't think, because I haven't heard from anybody that it's been an issue, but I happened to look at it when I was trying to do some training with a PSAP that the copy to template tool isn't quite working correctly right now. If you have some of those new AP address point geomsag check source tables in your database, the editor tracking where it's trying to shut off the editor tracking to load the data in so it doesn't override your current database dates and then turn it back on, was running into an issue where it was trying to turn on and off one of those new tables and causing an error. So just go swap out the check to tell it just ignore those tables, and then we'll be good to go to copy data into a fresh template if you need to use that tool to load your data into a new database. Then just some stuff kind of on the radar. With the conversion of PSP, we need to add a new MSAG tool in there that's going to look at the TN database coming from PSP that's got some slight differences from the current 911 net version. So we'll rename that current tool to identify it as the 911 net version and then add one in that functions with PSP's data. And we're mostly complete on testing and adjustments for an official pro support, Python 3 toolbox support. So that's kind of ongoing, and we should have a version of that out at some point later this year. And that about wraps it up for me. Just a reminder, the toolbox story map is out there. So when the new toolbox releases, you'll be able to get the download there. It'll have a little bit more details about the changes in the tools, what the new error messages look like. Just kind of more detail than you can get in a quick email or presentation here. If you're curious or you just forget and want to go back and reference it. And the link is there along with the QR code. This is my contact information. If you have any questions or comments about anything in the toolbox, please let me know. Some of the changes that get into these toolbox versions come from feedback from our users. So we always appreciate to hear from you. If something's not working for you or you think something could be done differently or a little bit better, always happy to hear those emails. And if you need any help with anything related to the toolbox, or your submissions, training some new staff with using the toolbox, any of those things that come up around the end of the quarter, yeah, feel free to reach out for me. I'm a resource that's available and always happy to help look at data and help you get your submission in and on time and with correct data. So thanks everybody, and appreciate your time.
Great, thanks, Will. Any questions for Will? I love that, you know, here's Will showing off. He's got a QR code. Wow, I've got to learn how to do that. I think that's really neat. So, okay, so let's see here. Looks like I'm gonna hand off to Sherry. Sherry, do you have control of the screen? Okay. See, Sherry, we can't hear you if you're talking.
No, when you take control of the screen, you lose your mute button. So I had to turn it back on.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I do have a few things to go over with everybody today, and we're going to start with a reminder of something that we went over in the last session, which is map discrepancy reporting in Radius. So within the Radius software that sits in the 911 centers, there is a map discrepancy reporting function, and it allows the telecommunicator to report issues that come up with the map or anything that they might think of as the map. We'll talk about that just a little bit, but the types of things that we're seeing quite a bit of are address corrections where they say, hey, this address point is on this building, but that isn't actually the address there. They might report road name issues, but they also might report that there is a layer that's not working. So maybe the one that has come up a couple of times recently is the mile marker layer. That is a layer that is hosted by KDOT. And it's gone down a couple of times recently. So they might report that kind of thing, or they might report some kind of geocoding failure where, you know, they tried to look something up, or the 911 call failed to geocode appropriately. So those types of things are all the types of things that get reported through map discrepancy reporting. We keep an eye on all of them, but we only respond to the ones that are really related to our services or call routing issues, that kind of thing. We don't get involved with the ones that are just address corrections for address points. The current maintainer for the PSAP should be getting a copy of these. And so your job as the maintainer at a PSAP is to make sure that you review them if you get them and address any GIS issues that might come up before your next data submission. It generally isn't something, unless you see a really big problem, that you have to rush a submission in for. But certainly if it's getting reported by the 911 center, it's something that you need to look at. And just to give you an example, this is an example of an email that comes in from a map discrepancy report. There is a little map, and it is an attachment to the email that you can take a look at. Unfortunately, there's no tool for them to draw on it or indicate exactly what their problem is. So you have to take a look at the description information that comes along with it. But it does tell you where it came from, what user is reporting it, and what the center of their map was, the XY of the center of the map at the time that they put in the discrepancy report. So something else that happens in Radius that has come up in discussion a time or two recently is what three words. So what three words is a geocode system that has the world divided into 3 meter squares, and each one of those squares has a unique combination of 3 words. Originally, it was designed for emergency response as well as like deliveries and things in areas with no addressing at all. But it obviously has a whole lot of uses in that a 3 meter square is a super specific place and can help be very clear where someone is, say, inside a park or at a campground, that kind of thing. And it is built into Radius, so it actually displays on every 911 call. And this picture shows the screen from a 911 call that came in. You have the address information, obviously, but if you look towards the bottom third of the picture, you see the lat long, both in decimal degrees and in degrees, minutes, seconds, and you see what 3 words. And the what 3 words is an app that can be added to phones and that responders can look at. It's built into a lot of different responder maps as well. So occasionally your 911 center might talk to you about what 3 words and about how they're using it or why. And I just wanted to kind of bring it up and show you guys that it was there, what it looks like for them. You can go to the What 3 Words website and they have a map service running so that you can scroll around and see what the word combinations are in your area or for specific places that you're looking for. I will warn you, don't look for logic in it. It's not like everything in a particular line starts with engraving and then the other 2 words change between shimmering and sank and things like that, like this thing is. They are very random, but it's certainly a neat service, and it's been used by 911 centers in Kansas several times, particularly dealing with recreation areas or large open areas. So if you hear about it or if you're interested in it, I encourage you to get more information and go take a look. Quick update on the GIS data model. So the Kansas GIS data model is currently at version 2.3, I believe, and we are working on version 3. And what we're doing right now on that process is making sure that everything within it aligns with the national version 2, okay, which is the current published version of the national data model. We've worked through the discrepancies between the 2 data models. And right now I am writing a crosswalk between the 2 standards. And what I mean by crosswalk is I'm taking the attributes that we have in our data model and the attributes in the national data model and showing how they correlate and explaining basically, without making you hold and maintain all of the fields in the national data model, how we're keeping the data compliant. Because there's a lot of things that we add in post-processing that takes the data you maintain and turns it into the data that is compliant at the national level. And while we've been doing that for a while, it's not anything new. We felt like it was important to include that crosswalk in the new version of the data model when it comes out. So the other piece that we are still working on is use case examples, primarily for address points and road center lines, just to help you figure out, okay, I've got an address or an address range that I want in the MSAG, but I don't want in a geocoder. Or I do want in a geocoder, but don't add it to the MSAG. That's not how I want it. Or maybe, you know, I don't want it in either one of those places. This is just here because I need it for something internally and I don't want you using it for those things. So this is going to be an appendix on the main document that goes through and explains some of the use case scenarios that we have been asked to assist with, and gives you some examples of how you would use the various flags like GeoMSAG yes and no, or whether something is for submission or whether it is authoritative, things like that. So we're going to write up some examples for you for that. The other use case examples are for address points that maybe aren't for specific addresses. And when I say specific addresses, I guess what I should say, traditional addresses. So how you might use address points for things like windmills, or how you might use it for things like center pivot irrigators where they have a phone line or power and an address has been assigned. That kind of thing. So we're going to be giving some more use case examples for address points that are outside of the traditional address. And while that effort is going on here in Kansas, work has started on version 3 of the national data model, but in all likelihood that it's expected to take at least 18 months. But I am one of the work group leaders and for that effort, and I expect it's actually going to take a bit longer than that. I think it'll be a couple of years before version 3 at the national level is out. Version 3 at the Kansas level should be out before the end of this year, unless something just crazy happens. There we go. So now a little update on training. The standard training that we normally do is going to happen. The data maintainer will be offered pre-conference at CAM. I put a little question in here. Is there anything that you would like to see covered, anything specific? Because if, for those of you that have seen the training recently, there is a pretty strong frequently asked questions section. And we try to focus on the things that you want us to talk about. So if there is anything that you would like to see covered, or are there any topics related to 911 or data maintenance, or even not data maintenance, just 911 related that you want to be hit during that training, drop me an email or let Will or Eileen know, and we will get together, put our heads together and get some material added to the class for it. That said, we're considering doing a very hands-on version of data maintainer training. This would be something where there was a lot of live data editing, addressing some common data editing issues, addressing running the tools and resolving the errors. This would be closer to a full day class. And we're thinking, because we have a lot of new maintainers that come in that have never worked with the Kansas NG911 data before, that this would be a good idea, but it wouldn't just be for them. Anybody would be welcome to attend that class. And I'm curious how interested people on this call would be in something like that. If you think that's a good idea and something you might be interested in attending, if it was close and worked into your schedule, if you would just drop that in chat and give us a little heads up that you think that's a good idea, or that that's something that you'd be interested in, it would be sure helpful to us. The final topic, I don't actually have a slide for, but the final topic is the GIS-based MSAG, the GeoMSAG. And I don't have a slide for it because I really didn't have anything to add. This has been we have had these through a company called Intrado for quite some time, and we are working with AT&T on converting to a new service. That was the PSP that Will was referring to, and we are still in testing. We had really hoped it would be moving a little faster than it is, but as I said, I'm afraid I don't have much of an update in terms of movement in the process, but we will not cut you loose on it or make you have to deal with it until we're comfortable that the process is clean and finished. And in the meantime, until that happens, if you do have any concerns about what is in your MSAG, or you have any reports of problems with the addresses on phone records or anything like that, you are welcome to get with me or to get with Will or Eileen. And again, we will put heads together and get the problem solved for you. So I believe that is it for my update.
All right, any questions for Sherry? Looks like we're getting some feedback on the full day class or that idea. All right, well, we'll look for any chats in the, or any other questions that pop up in the chat, but I'll just move on to the wrap up. So our next scheduled NG911 GIS user group meeting will be August 2nd from 1 to 2 p.m. I'll send out a reminder for that closer to the date. As Sherry mentioned, we do plan on doing training again at the CAM conference, so probably a pre-conference session, and then we'll see if anything else develops beyond the typical data maintainer training there. Be sure to always check out the Dask Hub, the NG911 initiatives page for anything updated with 911, as well as the Kansas 911 Coordinating Council's website, which actually just went through a refresh within the last couple months. So if you haven't looked at that page in a while, it's worth your time to go take a look at it. Most of the GIS content is kind of a repeat of what's in the Dask Hub GIS related, but there's some additional content on there that's more, project discussion type of thing. So be sure and check that out when you have a minute. Okay, with that, I think that wraps up our slides. So I'll give us a second here to see if there's any other questions that have come up. Feel free to unmute yourself or submit on chat if you have any questions. Let's see here, looking at the chat. Looks like BGS provides some update on the full day training. We have another question about the imagery. So Jacob asked, with imagery, is there a plan to fly 6-inch in the future, or will we continue to have the BIOP option? At this time, I think thanks to the Coordinating Council's generosity in doing that statewide imagery, we will continue to do the 1 foot resolution imagery. There's no plans to change that at that time, but the BIOP option will be held. We'll still have that available in the future. So, and you can activate that at any time. So the plan going forward, let's see, we did the imagery in 2021. I believe the plan would be to then fly it again in 2024. So at any time, if you're interested in BIOP, feel free to reach out to myself or Will or Sherry, and we can connect you with Surdex to get a quote and get some more information on any BIOP to 6-inch or even 3-inch. We've had some jurisdictions do 3-inch imagery over their area. So any other questions? All right, well, thank you all for joining us today. As a reminder, I'll put the slides and recording out on those websites mentioned once it's in the next couple of days. But in the meantime, if any other questions come up or concerns, feel free to reach out to any of us and we'd be happy to help you out. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.